Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to explore a really fascinating, mind-bending idea called Holarchic poetry. Yeah, that's Holarchic. Holarchic. It's a whole new way of looking at poetry, pioneered by a Polish poet and data analyst named Adam Holarchic, and it could completely change how you think about what a poem even is. So let me just start by asking you this. What if a poem wasn't just, words on a page, a finished thing you just look at? What if it was actually a dynamic, living process? A process where the poem itself is only one part of the puzzle, and your own consciousness is the other, absolutely essential piece. Well, that's the big idea, right at the heart of Holarchic poetry. All right, so let's really get into this first core principle, this idea of poetry as a process. And look, this isn't just about a new writing style. It's a totally different way of seeing things. It's asking us to stop thinking of poems as these static, finished products, and to start seeing them as catalyst. So all of these ideas come from a document called the 2026 Manifesto, written by Adam Holarchic himself. And he's very clear. He doesn't see his work as producing poems. He sees it as a craft, a kind of word work that's specifically designed for you to look inward, for a kind of thinking that also feels. And the manifesto just lays it all out there. It says, a poem is not an object. It is a process. The meaning doesn't just sit there waiting for you. It actually emerges from the relationship between all the parts of the poem and this is the kicker, you. You, the reader, are an essential co-creator of that meaning. So that name, Holarchic, it's kind of different, right? Where does it even come from? Well, to get that, we need to look at the philosophy behind the whole movement, which is this concept called a holarchy. The idea of a holarchy is built on these things called holons. Now, a holon is just something that is both a whole thing by itself and a part of a bigger whole at the exact same time. It sounds complicated, but think about it like this. Atoms are wholes, right? But they're also parts of molecules. Molecules are wholes, but they're parts of cells, and so on. The idea is that pretty much everything is built this way. And this is exactly how it works in a poem. You start with letters. They are complete little units, but they form a word. The word is a new, bigger whole that transcends the letters but still includes them. Then words form a verse. The verse transcends the words, but it couldn't exist without them. And you keep building up, layer by layer, until you get to the final holon, meaning itself, which blossoms out of the entire structure. Okay, this brings us to what might be the most critical piece in this entire system. And that piece is you, the conscious observer. Because in this way of thinking, the reader is anything but passive. So, Holarchic poetry actually draws this really cool parallel to quantum physics, specifically the observer effect. The basic idea there is that the simple act of looking at a tiny particle can actually change what it's doing, and it's the same idea here. When you read a Holarchic poem, your attention, your thoughts, your feelings, they don't just passively receive the meaning, they actively shape it, change it, and bring the poem's potential to life. Just like the manifesto says, the whole system hinges on the feeling and thinking conscious observer. It's why a Holarchic poem is really designed to be explored, not just read. You couldn't just listen to an audiobook version and get the full experience, because you'd miss that deep, personal back and forth that only your own mind can have with the text. Okay, so if you're the poet, how do you actually build one of these things to make that interaction happen? Well, the manifesto says they're constructed along two key dimensions, what it calls the horizontal and vertical spans. Think of it like this. The horizontal span is the poet's craft. It's the architecture of the poem that you can see, the wordplay, the metaphors, the structure. But the vertical span, that's all happening inside of you. It's the experience the poem triggers, the emotions it stirs up, the memories it brings back, the new ideas that spark in your mind. So you have the poet's external craft on one side and your internal experience on the other. Where do they meet? Well, they connect at the very heart of the poem, at a point that Holarchic calls the essence. And this symbol here represents it, SNCJ, which means essence. This is the energetic core of the whole thing. It's that magic point of fusion where the poem structure lights a fire in the reader, where your thinking and your feeling suddenly become one and the same. This quote from the manifesto just nails it. Your feeling, which is sparked by that essence, provides the fuel that drives the whole process. And at the same time, your thinking helps you navigate the geometry, the structure that the poet carefully built. It's this perfect dance between heart and mind. All right, so all this theory is great, but what does one of these poems actually look and feel like? Let's get our hands dirty and break down a real example to see how all these pieces fit together. So here we have a poem called Sizzy, Shizzy, Shizzy, Shunki. A quick translation is basically about these sensitive little pigs that get rounded up and taken into mass captivity, into not freedom. But trust me, the real magic here is hiding in the layers. And one of the first things you'll notice in Holarchic poetry is the integration of images. The text and the visual aren't two separate things here. They're designed to fuse together in your mind to create a single, more powerful whole-on of meaning, really ramping up both the intellectual and emotional hit. So let's break this down. First, you've got some clever wordplay. The word shishenki can actually mean pine cones, but it also sounds a lot like shinky, which means ham. So you've got this tension right away. But the real key, the thing that unlocks the whole poem, is the footnote. And this is so important. In Holarchic poetry, footnotes are not optional extras. They are an integral part of the poem's structure. This one points to the corpus pineal, the pineal gland, and says it's worth taking care of. And boom, with that one little line, the whole poem transforms. It's not just about pigs anymore. It's a metaphor about protecting our consciousness, our inner pineal gland, from being processed into mass-produced thought. Every single piece is a vital layer. And honestly, a poem like this is just scratching the surface. This system grows into much more complex structures, like epic works called Maharati, or something called generative matrices, which are basically frameworks designed to act as engines for creating whole new layers of meaning. The potential here is just huge. So we end up right back where we started, but maybe with a new way of seeing things. If a poem is a living process and your consciousness is the key that brings it to life, then what does that actually make you, the reader? Are you just a passive audience? Or are you something more? An artist in your own right, a co-creator of meaning itself? That's the powerful question at the core of Holarchic poetry. Thanks for exploring it with me.